In the last few weeks, there was an incident where an opposition politician was kidnapped, tortured, and killed, and the US Embassy issued a statement. And the president was not impressed by that, and she asked you, including, to stay away from internal politics. What's your take on that?
Actually, you know, when you analyze what happened, the president called for an investigation.
She did.
We supported the call for the investigation. And other countries did the same, civil society did the same, strong business leaders in Tanzania did the same. We collectively called for investigation supporting the notion that the president wants an independent, transparent, thorough, and free investigation. I think where things got a bit scratchy, if one could use that term, is that there were those who wanted to suggest that our support for the president's call for an investigation was somehow crossing a line with the Vienna Conventions in terms of the rules and regulations for how people operate. When you look at the history of Tanzania,
but she made it very clear that I mean, it suggested that there was some sort of interference with its sovereignty, the country.
Yeah, the issue of interference with sovereignty is always something that every country wants to protect. The issue of standing firm for democratic principles is something that all of us are obligated to do.
Right.
And it is not only it's not a nice thing to do, it is a necessary thing to do. And so I don't see a great amount of daylight between supporting the call for a transparent, comprehensive, and free investigation and supporting the efforts of Tanzania in developing its own definition of what its democracy is going to look like in the future. I think we will continue to collaborate, to work with Tanzania, because we have great hope for Tanzania's future. And so we will continue to speak with the government as the government seeks transparency, and we will continue to speak firmly about democratic principles. That's an obligation. That's a moral obligation. That's a phenomenally indispensable, non-negotiable moral obligation.
I think the argument that was being made there was that there's so many violent incidents that happen in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely.
And you don't see the Tanzanian ambassador in the U.S. making a comment on that. I think that's where she was.
Okay, now what you have to also go back to is this. Let's do a little history here. In the civil rights struggle in the U.S., the primary principal persons who gave encouragement, refuge, and hope to the civil rights generation. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I'm very active in the civil rights movement in the 60s and beyond, where people like Nyerere, people like Kenyatta, people like Nkrumah, it was African leaders who said to people struggling for civil rights in the U.S., you must stand up firmly for civil rights and justice. And we will set the example. This whole notion of self-reliance, of being able to stand and govern oneself, came straight from Nyerere. As a teenager, I was inspired by Nyerere to be actively engaged in. So Tanzania was speaking to the world. Tanzania spoke to South Africa, to Zimbabwe, to Zambia, to all of Africa about the need to be an independent, free country that stands for principles of equity. So Tanzania has a history of doing that. That's why, to this day, every freedom movement on the African continent owes a debt to the wisdom of Nyerere and the example of Tanzania. When Museveni was in Tanzania before going to fight against Idi Amin, Museveni got his strength and his courage from Tanzania's saying that the world needs to be free and that the world needs to be independent and the world needs to be strong. Right. So one has to look at the historical context. So we learn from each other. That's what partners do. We learn from each other, we grow with each other, we learn from each other's experiences. And in the speech I made, I started off by citing the political violence in the U.S. in this election cycle and made the statement that no democracy is perfect. So all of us imperfect people are working together with each other to make all of us better. And that's what we do here.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time.
Oh, okay, good.
Really appreciate
I could have gone for another hour and a half.
Crown Media. Hapa ni nyumbani.